Hi, I'm Jackie.
And I'm Candace. Welcome to WTF.
Women Talk Finance.
Our WTF podcast will take a simplified approach to finance, and we talk about investing, a topic we believe women don't talk enough about.
We'll discuss common financial questions and challenges that women face in business and throughout their personal lives. I'd like to give a quick disclosure before we begin our conversation. This overview is for informational purposes only. We might include some projections, and those should not be relied upon for the purpose of investing. Past performance is not indicative of future results, and any investments we mention are meant for accredited investors only. And any offer can only be considered upon review of a prospectus and relevant offering documentation. So please keep this in mind as we move through this overview, and remember that these are our opinions only. We are super excited to be here with Kate Shannon. Kate is actually a friend of mine who I describe to others as the person who does everything. Kate is a creative. She's an entrepreneur. She's a businesswoman. She is a painter, a tango dancer, a published author. She has done significant work on grief study and how the brain develops. She's a fire dragon, which I love. It's so true. It's so true. And a Gemini. What am I missing? She's built a tiny home. She is a mother. She's kind of all of the things. So we are super lucky to be sitting here talking with you today. Kate, what are we going to hear from you today?
Well, hopefully about many things, including the intersection of women and finance. So I brought some statistics. I'm happy to share resources that I've found along the way to help ask good questions so that we can each find our own best answers, and just to support the conversations that we're all having about money and meaning, giving, serving, health, longevity, in whatever way I can.
I'm so excited for this conversation, and we've had the privilege of chatting with you for a few minutes, and I'm like, oh my gosh, all of this is gold. So I'm really excited for our listeners to get to, absorb so much of this conversation. We actually were like, oh, keep it for the podcast. But one of the things you said in the initial conversation was that women don't talk about compensation and finance, and we are keeping the glass ceiling in place by not having that conversation. I thought that was a really powerful statement. Do you want to elaborate a little bit more on that?
So I started thinking a bit about that as I was scrolling through my LinkedIn page, like you do, and saw it was specifically part of the BIPOC community, a posting for a job. So I'm learning and paying attention to. And the underlying context was that here's the salary range for the job. These are the qualifications that we're looking for. And we would really encourage the rest of the community also to be open and explicit about salary ranges and qualifications so that people know, women know, if they want to opt into an opportunity and what their potential is, so that it's not a secret. And another thing that I've picked up along the way is about just negotiating. We talked a little bit about this, sort of in our free time.
I think you said women don't negotiate, or there's a good percentage of women that don't negotiate.
But to negotiate. So here's the invitation. Whenever an offer is made and it isn't the offer that you want, or even if it is, there's always room to ask a question. Is this negotiable? And if there's a slight hesitation at all, then the answer is yes. And then another question is, if so, to what extent? What in here is negotiable? It could be about where you live. It could be about a job that you're seeking. It could be about relationship stuff. I mean, whatever it is this negotiable? And certainly in job opportunities. So before I became a financial advisor, I was a recruiter. And some of this knowing is around that experience. Women often wouldn't negotiate. They'd be offered a job at 50, 60, 80, 250, 260, whatever. And we somehow seem to assume that the offer is what the offer is. Whereas men will often ask for more no matter what it is. And we're just not conditioned that way. We are conditioned to be nice and helpful and pretty and agreeable and childbearing, all the things that 100, 200, 300 years ago kept us alive. And we still carry a lot of that legacy. Yet today, we can opt if we want, but we don't need a man. We don't need to be married. We have economic power of our own. We can own things. We can work or not be mothers if we choose, which doesn't push us into a life of obsolescence. So we can have the things. We have choices.
Well, and in that kind of vein of being a good girl, right? We're told that so young, being the good girl. Research suggests, this is from Harvard Business Review, research suggests that 20% of women never negotiate at all. And a woman who opts not to negotiate her starting salary upon graduation will forego an average of $7,000 the first year and will lose between $650,000 and $1 million over the course of a 45-year career. That's one woman leaving $1 million on the table by not negotiating. 20%. That's a huge number of women that are leaving money. And we are economic powers. We have a huge position in our economy. So I know you had some statistics, but what is your feeling on that? Because I was actually quite shocked. That number is shocking.
Let's see, is it shocking? I'm not sure that it's shocking to me, probably because I'm in this all the time. It's depressing. Like I've got this whole deck of statistics that I've put together through the Bureau of Labor, through the CDC, and I had, multiple presentations from which to choose, and they all made me want to cry. So I would say that power of compounding, that $7,000 not invested over 45 years, cumulatively added to the next year and the next year of missed out money, not invested. So now you see it can be a huge number. But that's on top of all of the other things that we endure. Moms are more likely to be, if there is a single parent, it's typically a single mother. And a lot of these stats are, and it's really interesting. What I'm seeing or noticing is just that it's about 2 to 1, two-thirds, 1/3, where, example, caretakers. So if somebody's having, someone in the family is having a health experience, daughters, wives, and other women, 2 to 1 are the caretakers. Parents, single parents, 2 to 1, women to men. So men, doing a lot, but it's still, you don't look at it and go, yeah, that's real equitable. So you think about women in addition to not negotiating. So this is like a compounding wounds that I'm feeling, the plateauing that we do. So first plateau, becoming a parent. So often women, more so than men, will elect to stay home and raise children. So I have girlfriends that have been at home raising kids, which is hugely important and a really amazing choice, but plateau for career if she's not also doing something else, working part-time or whatever. Just wants to be a stay-at-home parent, there's a career plateau. Then there's usually another career plateau when she steps out to take care of a parent. And then there's another career plateau when she steps out to take care of an aging or elderly partner. So you throw that on top of parenthood, on top of plateaus, and it sounds so cliche, but it's hard. It's hard. So what are some of the solutions I would love to hear even what you guys
I think we have to start reorienting the mentality behind it, because part of that same study from the Harvard Business Review, when selecting metaphors for the process of negotiation, women liken it to going to the dentist. And I feel that very deeply personally. Like if I have to go negotiate something, or if I want to go ask for something and I'm told no, there is a visceral reaction, a physical reaction, right? I might start sweating or feel very small, or like I'm doing something wrong by asking. And I don't know if that's a similar experience that either of you have had, but I think we have to start with the mentality behind it, because that process of negotiating shouldn't be painful. It shouldn't be like going to the dentist.
Right. So how can we reframe it? One idea is that it's a conversation with somebody we appreciate, respect, admire, and we also appreciate, respect, and admire ourselves. So coming out the other side, we just want to make sure that whatever agreement we make honors both of us and both of our sets of needs. And if it doesn't, it's okay. Like we could go separate ways, or I might be willing to acquiesce something. Maybe you're willing to acquiesce something because I have, the need imbalance is different. But I think going into negotiation as a cooperative adventure might be one idea.
It doesn't have to be a win-lose. I think that's what negotiation feels like. It needs to be this battle, or it needs to be a fight to win. And I think there is a win-win solution, and maybe even saying that, hey, I think there's some middle ground here that we can reach. But I'm guessing there's a listener right now who's sitting here going, I have left a lot of money on the table.
Yeah.
I have left so much. I've never negotiated my pay. What does somebody do right now if they've never entered into that conversation?
I'm a huge fan of finding coaches or other people who can help us gain the language to do things when we know we need to do them. I'm also a huge fan of looking internally for wisdom and guidance. I think especially if you're trying to do something that's never been done before, going to find a mentor who's not done the thing isn't very helpful. So a lot of that is, internal imagination, but practicing the words. So first, awareness, knowing that there's a gap, talking about it. If you've got people at work or in your community or neighbors who do the same sort of thing, talking about compensation can be huge. How much do you make? I mean, we're in the same role. How much are you making? And how do you feel about that? And what kind of benefits do you have? And is the work that we do commensurate? And are our benefits commensurate? Our pay? There are men out there who will talk about it, who if they feel safe and understand all the dynamics and have a sense of fairness and openness, they'll also disclose. And I don't know that I would disclose my compensation at this moment publicly. Like that feels very vulnerable. But in a private conversation, absolutely. So the talking and then the asking. So first I realized that maybe there's a gap and I've never negotiated before. Maybe I do or don't know that there's more potential income that I could be making. That may or may not matter to whether or not I ask. And then finding the courage to go and say the words out loud. You can't lose, even if the answer is no. Andrea Schur ran this really cool class called Cultivating Courage. And the idea was 30 days of practicing small acts of courage could build courage muscles. And it worked. I did some really hard things at the end of that 30 days.
Can you tell us about any of the hard things?
Well, I'll tell you about... Okay, so I had to break up with somebody, and I couldn't.
That's a hard thing. Yeah,
it was so he was a good person, but I just knew that from an existential perspective, we weren't a great fit. And so I signed up for Andrea's class, and the assignments were things like say no to something, say yes to something. That's how I wound up going to Guatemala. Because yes. I said to myself, okay, I'm going to say yes to the next invitation, whatever it was, because those were the instructions. And I opened up my email, and my friend Nancy Chakrin, she was like, come to Guatemala. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. So I said yes. I registered for the trip, and I booked my flight. And I was like, Nancy, I'm in. And she said, are you kidding?
There are worse things to say yes to.
I know, but it wasn't small.
No, that's huge. No, I'm teasing.
Ridiculous.
That's huge.
Every day you hear about people making money by investing in IPOs and startups. But what about you? These kinds of investments are simply not available to Main Street investors. At Rowe Capital Group, we are committed to providing access to strategic, early-stage, primarily low-market correlated investment opportunities. Accredited investors go to rowecapitalgroup.com for more information. Rowe Capital Group, empowering your financial journey.
So the other thing that I said yes to, the assignment that day was invite someone over for dinner. And I lived in this really small apartment on the tracks, which I just had this sense that it was something about which to be embarrassed. And I thought, oh God, I don't really want to have anybody over. The train's going to go by. It's going to be really loud and we're not going to be able to hear one another talk. Whatever, just do the work. So I invited my friend Andy and her son Dashiell, who's my daughter's age. And I knew that like little kids are best friends and they love Andy. And so they come over. No sooner do we sit down to have dinner. And we're chatting and the train goes by. I was like, and I'm like, I can feel every like bone in my body like sink in on
shame.
I'm like shamed. And she screams over the train, "You live on the tracks?" I'm like, yes. And she said, "I love the train. We used to live on the tracks. You are so lucky to live here." You know, right? That's what I said. I was like,
so great.
It was so great. So it was all these little affirming moments where like courage transformed into more courage, like a sense that, okay, it doesn't always have to turn out terribly. Sometimes it can be really good.
So what could one of our listeners do as like one of those small steps? I don't know that everybody can say yes to a Guatemala trip. I mean, I'm open. If you want to send me an invitation, I will say yes. But
say yes to any invitation.
Yeah, what can people do? What can people start doing right now to flex that courage muscle? I love that.
Yeah. I think just practicing. And what I mean by that is doing the things that are a little bit scary. A lot of people put the language of leaning in around it. So when your intuitive knowing has a sense that something is exciting, Tara Moore wrote a book. I read a lot. Tara Moore wrote a book called Playing Big. And in the book, she discerns pachad from yara. So pachad is, and these are old Hebrew words, pachad is the fear part of the brain. And yara is this sense of wonder. So yara is different. It's scary, but it's when you say yes to, talking with your friends about money on a podcast. It's starting the podcast generally. It's starting a new job. It's asking somebody out. It's that sense of, I feel myself doing this upward, outward, forward, moving motion with my hands in the chest because somehow I feel like it's heart-centered and upward and forward. But saying yes to those things, and then also saying no to things that we just really don't want to do, and being more mindful of intuition, I guess.
I think that point about saying no to the things we don't want to do, I don't want to speak for everyone here, but I say yes to a lot of things because my no, I'm worried that the person that I'm saying no to will be upset with me, or that I'll disappoint, or that I'll let someone else down, or whatever it is. So I say yes to way more than I would like to.
Yeah.
Same.
And there are ways around that. I mean, they're small and subtle, and again, it's in the language. Hey, do you want to go to lunch? I would love to do that when my calendar frees up.
Yes.
So I didn't say no, but I said no.
Yeah. Or even practice an actual no with where those people that it's safe. Like if you sent an invitation and I was like, not right now. I can't right now, or I don't have the space right now.
I don't have the capacity.
Yeah. I know that that's a safe no. So practice those no's where you know it's safe. And then the courage builds up. You get more into a comfortable pattern of saying no. This goes to negotiating too. You change your patterns little by little. Start where it's safe, and little by little move into those areas where you may not feel it's quite as safe. Do it anyway. And then that courage builds and builds.
Yeah. I think too, on whole, I would love to have another lifetime and money to do the research, but I think on balance, it's a younger woman's problem. So, I've looked to mentors that I have who are 10, 20 years ahead of me. And there often comes a time when they just stop caring as much what other people think and just say, you know what? Life is so short, and I have been conforming to this box that everybody else has asked of me, and I'm tired. I had it.
I hear that because, yeah, I'm a people pleaser. I have a real hard time saying no. I will put myself in pain before saying no to somebody else. And I do think as I get older, it's just your priorities shift and you're like, oh, I don't have it in me to do this as much. Still have a lot of it, but it gets easier.
Brene Brown, her work on that exact thing is like, when it should have been a no, when you resent the person to whom you said yes. So pay attention and just go, oh, that's what that feels like. I don't really like that feeling either. Because resentment, that's not the spirit in which you want to give anybody anything, begrudgingly. At least I don't.
I like the idea of the tiny exercises, though, of practice saying no. Maybe practice a negotiation on such a small scale, on a purchase or on some sort of small contract, practice that negotiation and flex the muscle a little bit.
Candace, I'm positive, because you have a 5-year-old, that you practice on your 5-year-old all the time. They want stuff, you need to do other stuff, and you're trying to, make everybody happy, just like, it's a tiny, tiny example, but it's legit.
If you want to coach on negotiation, have a 5-year-old coach you. They are absolutely fearless and they have nothing to lose. So they go so aggressively in on every single negotiation. It is the most incredible thing I've ever seen in my life. And it's hard as a parent because your instinct is to just be like, no, stop. But the woman in me who recognizes that there's a challenge for women in negotiation, looking at my 5-year-old daughter, realizing she's a master negotiator, I'm thinking, how do I not beat this out of you at a small age? Because I think we kind of teach our kids. So I do let her have wins every now and then because I want her to, it's helping me help her because I'm getting lessons as well from it. But that's a great point. Your kids are great teachers in negotiation.
Yeah. Except note to self, throwing oneself on the floor, screaming and crying, probably not a great tactic.
The temper tantrum is not, but you know what? I told her that. I actually did tell her that the other day because she did throw a temper tantrum. And I was like, that's not a way to negotiate, man. Like, that is not how you win the argument. In fact, you just lost the argument. Like, don't. So I'm coaching her and I'm coaching myself. I'm like hearing the messages. So I like that tip. Get into a negotiation over a candy or something with your kid.
And I know what you mean too, just to, like as one friend to another, to affirm, I don't want to beat or train. We already do enough training of particularly our daughters on how to be in the world. You don't want to break her spirit. That's leadership skills. She's going to need that someday. And that's a direct quote from Shana Brodnax, who used to run the conception to 5 programming at the Harlem Children's Zone. She said, that's leadership skills. She's going to need that someday. And I thought, I'm listening.
Oh yeah, I hear you. I think that's so good. I want a list of all these incredible people and books.
So many resources. I know. I was also thinking about negotiating. What is it that makes it so painful and uncomfortable for us? Why is it working against our wiring? And I think there's something inherently, as part of the negotiation process, we feel it very personal, that it's a reflection of us or our value. And I'm wondering if that's the same case for men or if it's more so for women. But if I'm negotiating something and I make a request or make an ask and I'm told no.
If you don't inherently believe that you already deserve it.
Yeah. There's something there where it's like, ooh, is this about me? And I think if we can work toward getting away from that, in some sense, this is a game. It's just navigating different situations in life with 2 people that have 2 different perspectives and 2 different points of need or 2 different pain points and 2 different goals. That's it. So how can you try to meet both people's objectives? It's not about the person. It's about their objectives.
And I don't mean to pick on the word, but you just said game and it struck a nerve.
In a bad way?
Yeah. So I go through all these coaching and training sessions as an advisor, as a person. I always find like my quarterly thing outside of work. Like I'm going down to do a writing and meditation retreat with Susan Piver in Austin again this summer, which she's incredible. She's the one who wrote The Wisdom of a Broken Heart. And she's a Buddhist meditation teacher, and just a really lovely teacher, just a great teacher. Anyway, the game. A lot of the sessions that are available for us to opt into, and I have before, frame things as a game. Keeping your points. What's the scorecard? Are you winning? Who's the loser? Who's the name on the top of the grid of money made and the person at the bottom? And if for any of us who work in sales organizations, that's the culture. It's an inherited culture. So there's a part of me that takes a step back from all that and says, that doesn't feel intuitively good to me. Like, why can't we both win? Why can't you be awesome and I be awesome?
Well, and
there's
I think
like room for both of us.
You're using game with like a winner and loser with a game inherently. What if it's just play?
Play would be great.
Play. It's exercise. Let's use that word.
Yeah. And I don't mean to attack the language, but
it's interesting.
We use these things, like it's just a game. Like, well, except it's got $1 million potential net impact. And that's a lot, that doesn't feel very gamey to me.
Well, and a game implies, you're right, there's a winner and a loser. I have a lot at risk here because I need this job. Am I risking not getting the job because I'm playing a game? And in a one winner, one loser, am I at a 50% stake of losing? Is this it can feel risky.
And even risk in being perceived a certain way. I don't want to be perceived as somebody who, fill in the blank. And I heard along the way, you do what you need to do, but let go of the outcome. And we can't control other people's perceptions. We try. That's what lying is all about often, but we actually can't. And so the part that we can do is like the hero's journey. You say the words out loud, and then you wait to see what comes.
This was powerful. I get so much out of all of these conversations. I sit here and just soak it in. So I hope that our listeners got a ton out of it. What do you want to say directly to a listener right now sitting here thinking, and they could be at any stage of their career, right? But I know they're sitting here mentally thinking, how much have I left on the table? What do I need to do today? What can they do right now to leave this conversation with a little bit of power in their pocket?
Yeah. So I maybe at least twofold. Whenever we think about where we are today and the net culmination of the decisions that we've made, I think about it in terms of relationships, investing, the homes that we live in. I did or didn't take the thing I think maybe in hindsight I should have done. I think there's a fair amount of letting go of that because we always have 2020 in hindsight. Our vision is perfect looking back. Oh, if I just would have. And we can't punish ourselves, or we shouldn't punish ourselves for the hindsight. Because at this moment we know, and it's true if we extrapolate back 5, 10, 15 years, that all we can do is make the best decision today, looking forward with the information that we have. So gather good information, like do your due diligence to support your next right action, and find that courage to say the words out loud, to try the conversation, to practice on people that are safe, and then to take the step.
Go to Guatemala.
No, that was such a reach. But again, those synergies, like I met people who are now involved with the grief work and supporting that exploration. And that's, life bends in these really interesting ways.
That's amazing. So give yourself some self-love, give yourself some grace, give yourself a hug. I'm saying that mostly to me, but I hope that the listeners are doing the same. and check back in because we have so much more to talk to Kate about.
We're going to talk to Kate about financial planning in your 20s, in your 30s, in your 40s, and in your 50s, some general life lessons, and then just we'll see where that conversation goes. We will also be doing a session with her about the tiny home she built and kind of some fun decisions she's made in her life that are linked in different ways to finances. So join us back here. Thank you for sharing part of your day with us. Please hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with the WTF Women Talk Finance podcast.
Email us with questions, suggestions, or just say hi at media@rowcapitalgroup.com.
Again, thank you for listening to WTF Women Talk Finance podcast.